Okay, so now I'm going to bring you to the Sun article, and I'm going to read the Sun article to you and again deliver some commentary. The assistant editor, Katie Forrester, had an exclusive with James Renner, who is the reporter who has a podcast out there. You can see his YouTube videos of the podcast, and his videos are one that I have, at least one of his videos is one that have shared in my past videos over Amy Bradley, where he's talking to one of her ex-girlfriends named Kat. And Kat believes that Amy is no longer with us. And in my opinion, seems to believe that Amy also fell overboard and was not taken off the ship against her will. And but she doesn't make it clear whether she thinks that Amy self-harmed herself or whether it was an accident. She alludes to just being her falling overboard, but she also does give us some indication of Amy being having a very dark character as well, getting into those dark thoughts as well. James Renner, I did not know had been close to the family. He was close to the family. He was keeping in touch with them, going through research with them on this case. He is a former reporter who turned investigative reporter who turned a true crime author. He actually has gone through this case. He's taken the journey that the family took, the whole trip. And he's also interviewed a lot of people that were part of the Netflix documentary and who were involved in the case some way, shape, or form. So when I came across this article that was written August 9th, 2025, I was like, man, why didn't I see this sooner? But now I'm glad that I have. Thank you, Reddit. You people are great. I love how you put information out there for everyone to see and view. So I'm going to go ahead and read this to you. The article is called Key Points Missing from Netflix Doc Could Prove What Really Happened to Amy Bradley When She Vanished from Cruise Ship. Again, August 9th, 2025. And this is The Sun talking to James Renner. I will put this link in the description as well. Important details left out of the Netflix documentary about missing American Amy Lynn Bradley could prove how she vanished on a cruise ship almost 30 years ago. Wow, almost 30 years ago. As a mother, I can't even imagine. An expert has claimed Amy was 23 when she disappeared from the Royal Caribbean's Rhapsody of the Seas on March 21st, 1998, during a family trip. The case has left the true crime community scratching their heads for years, and the three-part series is one of the most watched on the streaming service. Wannabe lawyer and true crime fan Kim Kardashian, wannabe lawyer, is even said to have been courted to help try and crack the case, according to TMZ. Amid conspiracy theories that Amy was trafficked by author and YouTuber James Renner, who has done extensive research on the case and is set to release a new book next year. I can hardly wait for this book. Guys, I can hardly wait for this book. I'm going to pre-order it if that's an option. I'm going to make sure I get my hands on this book ASAP. Believes there could be a simpler answer. He's like me in a lot of ways, James Renner. I haven't seen many of his videos, but the ones I've seen, he does seem to go for the simple solution. Being the most obvious solution is usually the one. In an exclusive chat with the US Sun, he said, I think it's very interesting when you look at the facts of the case, such a small detail that doesn't seem to mean anything, but it might mean everything. They make a big point of saying that the balcony door was ajar in the morning, but they also suggest that Amy then left the room without telling anyone. But if you've ever been on a cruise ship, you know that there are warning plaques in your room that say, do not open the cabin door when the balcony doors are open because the hallway is pressurized. Now, I want to go back to that Unsolved Mysteries intro as well as what we've seen in Netflix and seen everywhere else on interviews and in articles where the family states that, or the dad states that he heard something or something woke him up at that time when he finally realized that Amy wasn't there. And I think that the author could be alluding to the fact that if he heard something like the door, it would have been a lot more jarring and not as questionable as if he heard a door. What was that something? And I do agree with him. I have stayed on a cruise ship. I've heard the doors shut It is a very distinctive sound. Now, what I think you would not be used to hearing and waking up to is if somebody is falling overboard, and that is the sound, that kind of in process is what was going on. That's just, again, in my humble opinion, just throwing it out there, but I'm just setting this up for you on why he's bringing this up because the dad said something woke him up. And yes, they did mention, and the dad mentioned that the patio door was open. So in his mind, that meant that Amy came inside, took off her shirt, put on another shirt, maybe got new shoes. They can't really tell because they don't know how many shoes she took. Apparently, she took like more than 10 pair and she left the one she had been wearing outside, that kind of thing. So he thinks that, she must have left the room. But other people think that there's no evidence or there's really nothing convincing to say that she left that room. So let's pick back up. In fact, some people have lost fingers because it slammed shut so hard. You cannot quietly leave a cabin room with the balcony door open. It would have woken everybody up. That means not just the dad, but the mom and Brad himself. And then those doors do close pretty loudly, even when you're not meaning for them to close loudly. They close loudly. Let me know what you think about that. During his research for the book, Renner says he spoke to crew staff who were briefed about what the FBI found in the cabin when they dusted it for prints. This is so interesting, guys, and I'm going to tell you one thing. I know it's going to come up, but I've read that the FBI never admitted to this. If he is writing a book on it and he is the investigative reporter that we know he has written several books, a few books on true crime. I'm going to believe that he has a good source for this, okay? So what I'm about to read to you next, if you haven't read it already, is quite compelling. He alleged on the railing they found Amy's palm prints, and on the glass door they found her footprints. Let me read that to you again. During his research for the book, Renner says he spoke to crew staff who were briefed about what the FBI found in the cabin when they dusted it for prints. He alleged on the railing they found Amy's palm prints, and on the glass door they found her footprints. So what he's saying here is for the prints to be that way, situated that way, then she would have had to be sitting on the rail with her feet pressed against the glass and her hands on the rail. So it's possible that she kicked off. And when she kicked off, the door opened a little bit, meaning the patio door opened a little bit. I'm not sure how much I buy that, but that the prints were on the glass and the railing is pretty interesting. I still think that the patio door was open anyway. I really do. I think that both of them were drinking. It was a long day and longer morning, and Brad, he could have easily forgotten, especially after you go to sleep. You forget a lot of things after a night like that, that the door was somewhat open, that he just really didn't open it or didn't close it very well. Or maybe she did at some point open it and come in for a little bit and went back out. Either way, it doesn't change my opinion. I don't think she left that room. But I also don't think that the family had anything to do with any of it. I think it's possible she sat on the railing. I think what we might be looking at here is what the French call l'appel du vide. I don't know if I said that right, which we call of the void. I think it's possible she had a really rough night. She'd been drinking. Again, I know some people say, but she was only drinking like 6 beers over that span of time. No, she'd been drinking all day. They drank while they were off doing their excursion. I think they were off-roading or whatever. And then they came back. They were getting ready for dinner. They were drinking there. And then they went out and drank some more. That was a lot of alcohol at the time. And while I know she was used to drinking, being a heavy drinker, that's what Brad said. Again, that is something that I find very telling, that how much of a drinker she was, that maybe that was her coping mechanism. And what was she coping with? Well, she was coping being a gay girl at that time, in my humble opinion. She had been drinking. She had a very big decision to make when she got home from that cruise ship. And that was, does she live her life out in the open as a gay woman? which is how she identified to everybody. She didn't identify as bi, she identified as gay and lesbian, and I 100% believe that. That is my opinion. I do believe that Amy Bradley, if common sense is dictating what we see, what we have read, is definitely she is at this point identifying as gay and lesbian. I know she had a boyfriend. I don't buy it. You can buy it. I don't. And I do believe that that was a struggle for her, but also more with her family. Maybe not with Brad, and maybe the mom was not as concerned about it, but definitely I could see, especially in some of the body language from the dad on photos with her when it's just them two, it does seem like there is some tension there, maybe some disappointment from him, but I really do think that there was some tension there on that. So, does she live that life and risk disappointing her parents and not having that close relationship? Or does she live a lie and turn her back on who she really is? So, all that's going on in her mind. Now, most of you may know this already, but Netflix is going to have another show, and it's going to be Amy's ex-girlfriends is sharing what they know about Amy. I think it's supposed to be more like a celebration of life type of show, but I find it hard to believe that there's not going to be some, I don't know, behind the scenes on how the family really accepted what Amy told them about being a lesbian. Not so much, again, her brother, but the parents. I think she's sitting there out on the balcony when you're in places like that, just like when you're standing on the edge of a cliff, there is that voice inside you sometimes that comes up and says, "What if?" I think she's sitting on that balcony thinking, "What if?" And by pushing off, she causes action. Ranner explained that once you're overboard on a cruise ship, there is only a 20% chance, and that is correct. In fact, they think sometimes it's lower than that. You're going to survive being in the rough waters long enough to be pulled out. But people are going to say, oh, but the waters aren't that rough. And they were in port. It doesn't matter because if you jump in that big body of water, there's so many things that could happen to a body that has gone overboard at that point, especially if it hasn't been found within so much time that the body may never be found. And the reason being is look at that ship. People think a cruise ship when they read the story and they're thinking of a normal sized boat. But go get yourself, put yourself up against a cruise ship. Now think of yourself falling and that cruise ship is still going. What propels, I guess I just gave it away, that cruise ship? That is what your body is having to put up with. The size of that ship, you being dragged under that ship, and then there's that element. Okay. So that's why I get it. You're thinking, if she fell off a boat, a paddle boat, I don't know, a jet ski, maybe. Yeah, maybe. But this is not that. And that's why it's completely different here. So I think that's what happened. This is James Renner saying that. I think it's likely she went overboard earlier when they were further from the point. Again, we have no confirmation of a timestamp. We only have what the dad said. And unless, and I have not seen it, especially in the earlier interviews and articles, I've never seen him say, well, I looked at the clock or when I looked at the alarm clock, anything like that. He just says it must have been about, and to me that says I don't really think he looked at anything. I think he was just guessing at the time. Guessing about the time, not at the time. Guessing about the time at the time. He said, James Renner, he will discuss his theory in full in his book, A Cruise to Nowhere, which will be released next summer, 2026. He said, I talk about some stories where eyewitness testimony was faulty. I read them all the time. Eyewitness testimony is a curse and a blessing, but definitely eyewitnesses are very, very faulty with their testimony. And I put links in my past videos, but please do your research. You're going to see that it is so scary. It is so scary how faulty eyewitness testimony can be. And it's because memory doesn't work like it does on TV and film, where you see this flashback in Technicolor. Every time we access a memory, we rewrite it a little bit. These people have the best intentions. They want to help this family, but they're coming at it backwards. They've been shown the picture of Amy, and then it matches up with this memory in their mind. On the theory that Amy was kidnapped and trafficked. Renner claims there is no verified account of a Caucasian woman being abducted and trafficked in the Caribbean ever. I've researched. You go on Reddit, there's been people there that have researched. There's YouTube videos on some of on debunking some of this where people have actually done their research. There just simply is there's no cases. There's nothing there at the time to say that this was a situation in that area, not just with Amy Bradley, but with anybody in that area. That I mean, that's just the facts right there. This would be at first, which is very unlikely, he said. It's just not worth the trouble. A white woman is going to stand out in Grenada, and it's not worth the risk for the people that do this. They have plenty of women from the Dominican Republic, from Colombia, from these poor countries that can go there and make more money than their families could in a year, a couple of weeks for these brothels. Again, this is talking about trafficking in the sense that the women who get involved have a hard time getting out. That's the kind of trafficking we're talking about here. Yes, they go there, they think they're going to make all this money, but once they try to leave, they can't leave as easily as they thought they could. That's the trafficking we're talking about that's happening in this region. Also, labor trafficking is happening in this region as well, especially during those times. Renner met with the Bradley family while researching his book several months ago, but he alleges they cut contact with him after an initial meeting. I came to care for the Bradley family quite a bit. Amy's mom, Iva, is the type of person that loves hard, he said. I met with them about a year ago and was invited to their house and had lunch with them. He claims that before he arrived, Iva told him anyone who was invited into their home was considered family, a comment he did not take lightly, and he was hoping to build a relationship with them. Unfortunately, once they learned that I knew that Amy was gay and that I had spoken to her partners, that was the last contact I had with them, he claims. The U.S. Sun has reached out to Amy's family for comment, but did not hear back. It's very sad. I do think that if Amy had lived, she'd probably be with her partner Molly, and I hope she would have had the support of her family. Asked what drew him to the case, Renner said he likes unsolved mysteries that are giant puzzle boxes. It could be that they walked away to start a new life. It could be they committed self harm. It could be they were abducted. It could be they were unalived. So everything's on the table. And those cases intrigue me because they're very rare. And you know, one of the reasons they're still like that is because they haven't been properly investigated. So, what I like to do is just chip away at some of those other theories and see what's left. As for me, I've narrowed it down what happened to Amy Bradley to the point where I don't believe she ever came off the balcony. I think it's highly likely that she is responsible for whatever took place there. Renner also previously spoke to the U.S. Sun about the now debunked theory that Amy was taken from the ship and trafficked by a bass player called Alistair Douglas, known then by his nickname Yellow. He took the same journey as Amy on the Rhapsody of the Seas and tracked Douglas down in Grenada, where the now Reverend granted him a brief interview. Douglas claimed the case had turned his life upside down and he was still receiving hate from trolls online despite being ruled out by the FBI on more than one occasion. Tearing up, he admitted, I've lost so many opportunities because of this, explaining that people Google his name and believe he had something to do with Amy going missing. My inbox, my Facebook, people have been writing me horrible stuff for years. Now, that is the sad thing, and I'm going to end this video with a clip from a body language expert and his colleagues that are not in the clip, but they are of the belief that he indeed is telling the truth, that he had nothing to do with this. And I believe he did not as well. I believe he was just what he said he was. He worked on a cruise ship, he was a musician, and that's it. I think he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And if this didn't go the way that James Renner and I think it went down, that she somehow fell off the ship, that they spent so much time pointing at him that they probably lost sight of who the true person that did it was. If there was that scenario, if that scenario did indeed happen, and I don't believe it did. But I do believe that James Renner and I are on the same page, as well as a lot of us out there, that there's just simply not enough evidence that you think that there would be had she left that room. Cruise ships at 6 o'clock in the morning, with that many people, I think what, over 3,000 people, there would have been a significant enough early bird risers to see Amy Bradley. Remember, the family, they themselves say that she caught a lot of attention. So if she caught up a lot of attention, then at 6 a.m. in the morning, she should have been recognized. She just should have been, whether she had a camera or not, whether she had shoes or not. Whether she was just wearing a white shirt or not. Whatever she was doing at that time in the morning, especially if she was with a black guy, she should have been seen by more than a couple of girls, definitively, on that ship in that area. And for those of you who have been on cruise ships, you know there are a lot of early birds, a lot of them around that area because it was on the top of the ship. A lot of people like to take their coffee out there and go sit, especially when you're about to pull in port. So I don't understand why not more people were able to confirm that it was Amy. And again, those two girls that said that they saw Amy, I think Brad himself says that those girls can't confirm the time that they actually saw Amy. So again, there's a lot of things here that cannot be confirmed, and especially that she ever left the room. And just based on a lot of other things that was said and shared, you think that she would have been. But I just think that this is one of those unfortunate tragedies, and it aligns very well with somebody who was going through a lot, and the family is struggling with a lot. There are narratives that their minds would rather go to, and that is why we're still here today trying to find a missing girl, not necessarily me, but other people out there trying to find a missing girl or find the story of the girl that went missing, who really just simply on that tragic morning, some way found herself in the ocean and her life was ended prematurely. Okay, so tell me what you think. I look forward to hearing from you. I look forward to your comments. And again, these are all my opinions. I know you have yours, but whatever your opinions are, please take care of yourself, take care of others, and God bless you. Until next time.